The protagonist of our story was nothing more than an arrogant teenager who treated his father in the worst way. One day, a portal appeared and transported him to a world of martial arts. There, he started his journey anew and managed to gain immense power, rising to the top of that world. However, he remained regretful for what he had done in his previous life. So, he decided to sacrifice everything he had achieved in his new world and return to his father and family, whom he had been away from for a long time. Yet, upon his return, he discovered that the world had changed, and he realized the suffering he had caused his family during his absence. Determined to set things right, he resolved to correct his mistakes, relying on the strength and knowledge he had acquired. In a world different from our own, the great military emperor, Lailchin, lived during an era when martial arts flourished and dominated the world. He was the only one who managed to unify the vast continent of Huan under his rule, earning this title due to the belief that his combat techniques had reached unparalleled mastery, as if they touched the heavens. Beauty, wealth, power, and eternal youth. These were all things that ensured he could obtain anything he desired in this world. Yet despite it all, he felt an emptiness, as if something was missing from his life. One day, the emperor sought out the one person who might put an end to this feeling, finding himself deep inside a cavern. There, the sorcerer, Black Saga, abruptly and fervently asked him what was lacking in his life, to the extent that he was willing to abandon everything and move forward on his chosen path. The emperor was taken aback by the sorcerer's words and warned him not to approach him so suddenly again. Black Saga, feeling offended, declared that baldness was not something one chose willingly, demanding an apology from the emperor, not just to him, but to all bald men across the continent. The emperor clarified that the issue was not with his baldness, but rather with his sudden approach and excessive boldness, which had been unsettling. The sorcerer then shouted at him to stop talking and apologize immediately. In response, the emperor stated that he would apologize to all the bald men of the continent, except for the sorcerer himself. Enraged, Black Saga told him that he was a ruthless ruler and that his life was bound to be miserable. As the emperor was about to leave, he stated that he had only spoken the truth. The sorcerer then asked why he was leaving when he lacked nothing, as a life of luxury and indulgence awaited him here. With sorrow in his voice, the emperor replied that a deep longing resided within him, a feeling far stronger than any regret he could ever experience. Black Saga laughed, saying he could not fully comprehend such strange sentiments, then pulled out a scroll made from snakeskin, explaining that it was crafted from the legendary serpent Emoji, which had lived for 1,000 years. He emphasized that possessing such a rare item was a privilege not granted to just anyone, only he was worthy of having it, along with the Pan-Tao fruit, which was said to descend from the celestial realm to the mortal world only once every millennium. No one else could claim such treasures, for he was the great military emperor, Lailchin, and yet, he insisted that there was a longing greater than everything he possessed. The emperor then asked why the sorcerer had suddenly become so talkative, and whether he was beginning to feel anxious and hesitant now that he had finally declared his determination to leave. Black Saga faltered for a moment before dismissing it as nonsense, saying that even if he were left all alone here, he would not even be able to die in solitude, and since the emperor had chosen to leave of his own free will, he could hardly contain his joy. The emperor scoffed, stating that he surely would, but no matter how much he tried, he would never understand, nor grasp the loneliness one feels when trapped in a world to which they do not belong, or the devastation that sinks in upon realizing they might never see their family again. Black Saga replied indifferently that he had no concern for family or such meaningless emotions, then picked up the crystal, stating that once it was placed upon him, there would be no turning back. He asked one final time if the emperor was absolutely certain of his decision, free of any regret or hesitation, fully aware that he would never be able to reclaim anything he had owned or achieved. The emperor laughed and assured Black Saga that he held no regrets or doubts. Rather, he was completely prepared, ready to return to his homeland and his true world, Earth, where his family awaited him. Black Saga reacted with intense emotion, channeling his power as he declared that if this was the emperor's wish, then as Black Saga, the greatest sorcerer in the continent of Huan, he would grant it. He then instructed Emperor Yangsu Hyuk to prepare himself, for this moment would strip him of everything. The emperor laughed, calling Black Saga insane, before gradually losing consciousness as his eyes slowly shut. In a hospital, Yangsu Hyuk lay on a medical bed, connected to various monitoring devices. Gradually, he began to open his eyes, unable to believe that the sorcerer Black Saga's spell had actually worked. Doubt crept into his mind, making him question the reality of what was happening. However, he resolved that if he had failed to return to his world, he would ensure that the old man's bald head gleamed even brighter as revenge. He looked around to confirm his surroundings, soon realizing that he was lying in a hospital in Korea. With a deep sigh of relief, he finally confirmed that he had indeed returned to his world. But the moment he tried to adjust his position on the bed, an unbearable pain shot through his arm, and his entire body ached, to the point that he felt as though he might perish right then and there, despite having just returned. His body appeared to be in a dreadful state. There was no way he could have deteriorated to this extent simply by lying down for a day or two, especially since Black Saga had assured him that he would return to the exact moment he had left Earth. However, it seemed that the sorcerer had failed to precisely control the flow of time. Yang, now seething with anger, cursed Black Saga in his mind, labeling him a fraud and a charlatan. But he soon realized that, in his current condition, there was nothing he could do. He needed to find a way to recover, even if only slightly. An idea came to him, to activate the Primal Earth technique, a stable internal energy method he had developed in the continent of Huandai, known for its remarkable ability to restore vitality and strength. As expected, he soon felt energy coursing through his body, until his muscles and vital organs were fully replenished, regaining their strength and vigor. He then began moving his body, ensuring that the technique was as effective as he had hoped. And just as he had anticipated, the primal earth technique worked like magic, bringing an incredible transformation to his body and skin. After regaining his energy and vitality, Yang decided it was time to call a nurse to check his vital signs. But as soon as he reached out to press the call button, a system window suddenly appeared before him, welcoming him to the power system and notifying him that he had been registered for the first time. It also instructed him, as a newly awakened individual, to protect his world. Yang was taken aback by its sudden appearance. Unable to believe what he was seeing, thinking it was merely a dream, he slapped himself across the face, only to feel a sharp pain in his cheek, confirming that this was indeed reality and not an illusion. At that moment, he once again cursed Black Saga, who had promised to return him to his world exactly as it was before he left. Yet, the reality before him was entirely different, making him feel that something was terribly wrong with the world he had come back to. Yang focused on the system window, which displayed his name and personal details in full, making him realize that this was no mere magical trick or illusion. Furthermore, it was impossible for a ghost or a yokai to manifest in such a form. Additionally, he felt as though he had spent far too much time in the martial arts world, to the extent that he had become completely detached from modern innovations. Even so, he could not rule out the possibility that Black Saga had mistakenly sent him to a world similar to Earth, but not the one he knew. However, if that were true, why were his name and birth date exactly the same? The whole situation felt too strange to be a mere coincidence. What annoyed him even more was that the system window remained in place, refusing to disappear. He waved his hand in front of it, demanding that it vanish immediately, and as soon as he did, the window began to fade away. Yang was astonished at how quickly the window responded to his command, further deepening his confusion and lack of understanding. He had only seen things like this happen in movies or video games, and that could only mean one thing. The world he had arrived in was not the same one he had lived in before being transported to the martial arts realm. At that moment, he noticed two nurses passing by his room, so he called out to them, eager to understand what was truly happening. However, the moment they heard his voice, they froze in terror, their expressions filled with shock at seeing the patient, Yang Soo-hyuk, awake and calling for them. Yang himself was equally bewildered, unable to comprehend why they reacted with such fear, especially since he had yet to say anything unusual. Without any warning, one of the nurses rushed out, announcing that she would call the doctor immediately to examine the patient. As soon as the doctor arrived, he began his examination. Then, after carefully assessing him, stated that his pupils were responding to light normally. He then asked if he was experiencing any unusual pain, or if he had any numbness or difficulty moving any part of his body. Yang responded that he felt none of those symptoms. In fact, he felt perfectly fine. The doctor was visibly surprised by his response, and remarked in admiration that this was truly remarkable, as his bodily functions showed no abnormalities whatsoever. Despite the fact that 5 years had passed since the incident in which he collided with the gate, Yang interrupted him in shock, demanding to know what he meant by 5 years, and how that could possibly be true. The doctor confirmed that it had indeed been 5 years since he lost consciousness, and was admitted to the hospital, where he remained in a coma all this time. Yang's shock deepened as he realized that if he had been unconscious for so long, that meant the current year was... The doctor finished his sentence, stating that they were now in the year 2028. Yang was utterly stunned by the time he had returned to. He cursed Black Saga internally, recalling how the sorcerer had constantly boasted about his magical abilities. Yet, in the end, he had completely failed to fulfill his request correctly. Yang swore to himself that if he ever managed to return to the continent of Huan, he would break the sorcerer's neck himself for putting him in this situation. The doctor then addressed him, saying that he understood he must have many questions right now, but the priority was to ensure his condition remained stable. He advised him to rest for now, assuring him that once he regained some of his strength, they could discuss in detail anything he wanted to know. The nurse agreed with the doctor, stating that she understood the shock he was experiencing, but he needed to focus on resting. She also informed him that they had already contacted his family, and they were on their way to see him. The moment Yang heard mention of his family, he immediately sat up, eager to hear more details. The nurse explained that during his coma, his family had taken turns visiting him almost daily, which was enough for him to realize how deeply they loved him. Yang was deeply moved, and he asked if they had mentioned when they would arrive. The nurse replied that they had contacted them about an hour ago, so they should be arriving soon. At that moment, the door to the room suddenly swung open, and a young woman rushed in at full speed. The nurse smiled and told Yang that his younger sister had apparently been the first to reach the hospital. His sister ran toward him, on the verge of tears, and with a trembling voice, she asked if he had truly woken up. Yang smiled and replied that he couldn't possibly forget something like that, then asked if she was really his younger sister, Su-ah, as he remembered her being much smaller. But now she had grown into a beautiful young woman. Su-ah's eyes welled up with tears, and she responded with deep emotion, saying that her older brother had really woken up and was speaking to her again. Yang laughed, saying that, as he had told her before, he would never forget such things, but from his perspective, she was the one who was truly surprising. However, before he could finish speaking, Su-ah threw herself into his arms, crying, overwhelmed by his return. At first, Yang was caught off guard, but he quickly found himself moved as well, and he embraced his younger sister. The nurse hesitated for a moment and then warned Su-ah to be careful, so she wouldn't accidentally hurt the patient, as his body had not fully recovered yet. Yang simply waved his hand, laughing, and assured her that it was fine. Su-ah sobbed, telling him that she had feared he would never wake up again, and that she would never see him. Yang apologized, saying he was sorry for making her wait so long and worry all this time. He then hugged her again in a touching moment, marking the reunion of the siblings after 5 long years. After she calmed down a little, she asked about his condition, and whether he was feeling any pain, especially since she had heard that those who woke up after colliding with the gate often suffered from severe pain. Yang responded playfully, saying he was perfectly fine, and that she knew him well. If he had lost his strength, he would be nothing more than a lifeless corpse. He then moved his arm in front of her to reassure her that he was in good shape. Su-ah warned him not to overexert himself, as he might experience severe pain later. Yang laughed and pointed out that despite all the knowledge she had thrown herself at him without a second thought. Su-ah responded innocently, saying that she hadn't done it on purpose. Her body had simply moved on its own. Hearing this, Yang smiled and told her he would let it slide this time. However, he noticed that she kept mentioning the gate collision and portals, which made him curious. He asked her what those things were and how they were related to him. Su-ah replied that it was natural for him to have no knowledge of the gates or the gate collision yet, then began explaining the situation. She told him that 5 years ago, in 2023, an unexpected catastrophe occurred. A massive earthquake, which at first seemed like a sudden natural disaster, struck, and that was when dimensional gates appeared, leading to another world. Not all of these worlds were unknown, but most of them consisted of dangerous zones called dungeons, where ferocious monsters resided. At the same time, some humans began awakening and developing special abilities to fight these creatures. In just 5 years, the world changed drastically, and the day the gates first appeared became known as the Gate Collision. Yang found the story his sister was telling him strange, especially when she spoke of monsters, awakened individuals, and supernatural abilities. He told her that this was far more information than he could process all at once. Su-ah reassured him that he didn't need to overthink it now. Once he left the hospital, he would quickly understand everything. Yang started thinking, connecting what he had just heard to the system window that had appeared earlier. He felt that it might be related to the awakened ones and their abilities, and he decided that as soon as he was discharged, he would investigate the matter seriously. However, he also realized that it would be wise to keep the system window a secret for now, as revealing it could be dangerous when he still knew so little about its nature. Suddenly, Su-ah noticed the serious expression on his face and asked if something was bothering him. He replied that it was nothing important, then changed the subject by asking whether she had enrolled in university and how her studies were going. Su-ah hesitated, looking a bit uneasy before finally admitting that she had not enrolled in any university at all. Yang was taken aback and questioned her sharply, reminding her that she had always been an excellent student. He feared that he might have been the reason for this outcome. Su-ah assured him that it wasn't as he thought, but she had found studying boring and needed to earn money. Yang sensed that his sister was avoiding the truth and making weak excuses, but he wasn't sure whether he should push for answers or pretend not to notice. Su-ah told him not to doubt her words, insisting that she was telling the truth, but she was also waiting for their parents to arrive. Yang responded by saying that she was just trying to change the subject, but he would let it go this time. Su-ah, frustrated, insisted that she was not lying, and that in any case, their parents would be there soon. As Yang reflected on the matter, he realized that these memories were now part of his past. However, he had never had any conflicts with his mother. On the other hand, his relationship with his father had been the worst. His father was a writer, always immersed in his work, whether as a novelist, poet, or even a critic. He spent most of his time isolated in his study, consumed by his writing, which often ended in failure, neglecting Yang in his childhood, and never spending time with him like other fathers did with their children. This made Yang feel abandoned. Moreover, his father constantly bore the burden of the family's financial struggles. But Yang could never accept that reality and had resented him for years, until one day, his frustration finally erupted. One day, after returning home from school, he confronted his father in a fit of rage, demanding to know how long he planned to keep writing these pointless stories. He told him that he should be ashamed of himself. His father, taken aback by his son's outburst, hesitated before replying that writing was merely a hobby, and that he had found another job, which he would start that very night. However, he reassured Yang that for now, the most important thing was to eat, and there was no need to worry about anything else. Yang didn't care about his father's words. Instead, he lashed out again, declaring that he could no longer stand this miserable life, then stormed off. Because of that, his father abandoned writing entirely, giving up his lifelong dream, just to satisfy his son. One day, their father returned home carrying a bag of food, calling out cheerfully to his children, announcing that he had bought them fried chicken, just as they liked. However, he was surprised to find Yang preparing to leave. He asked where he was going and whether he wouldn't be eating with them. Yang responded coldly, saying that he wouldn't be joining them because he was heading out to celebrate with his friends. Their father smiled and told him that spending time with friends was important too, but at the very least, he should have asked for permission before going out. Then, he pulled out some money, explaining that he had been saving it for emergencies, but he didn't mind giving him some so he could enjoy his time. However, Yang's reaction was unexpected. He threw the money to the ground in anger, shouting that he didn't need anything from him, that he didn't even have enough money to pretend to be a father, and that his actions were nothing but pathetic. Their father froze in place, unable to respond, especially when Yang continued, saying that if he weren't around, their family would be much happier, and that he should stop pretending to be a father now. Their father stood there in shock, processing his son's words, while Yang knew he had been rude and disrespectful. But at the time, he was immature, and never imagined that this would be the last conversation he would ever have with his father, the last time he would see him. Perhaps if he had known, he might have acted differently, though the chances weren't high, as he had still been nothing more than a reckless teenager, blinded by his own pride. As he was leaving, he suddenly felt something strange behind him, a surge of unfamiliar energy flowing through his back. When he turned around, he was stunned by what he saw. It was the first time he had ever seen a gate. But what shocked him even more was that when he looked again, he saw his father running toward him from a distance, getting dangerously close to the gate that had suddenly appeared. However, he didn't reach it in time. It was already too late. From the moment he arrived in the continent of Huan until now, that moment had never left his memory. He regretted it every single day, regretted his broken relationship with his father, and wished he could turn back time to before the gate appeared. That feeling had never left him, and the very first thing he had resolved to do upon returning to his world was to apologize to his father for what he had done. But 5 years had already passed. At that moment, his parents finally arrived, their faces filled with shock upon seeing their son awake after such a long coma. His mother rushed toward him, grabbing his hand, saying she could hardly believe he had finally woken up from his deep sleep. Yang laughed playfully, telling her that he was finally awake and in good health. His mother began crying, thanking God, expressing how she had once believed he would never wake up again. His father then asked if he was feeling any pain, or if he was truly all right, and Yang looked at him with deep emotion. Just as he was about to speak, his father interrupted, apologizing, saying that he had been forced to work harder to earn more money, hoping to afford better treatment for his son, but he had not been capable enough. At that moment, Yang replied that there was no need for such words, as the only person who should be apologizing was himself. He admitted that he alone bore responsibility for everything that had happened, even though his father had done everything he could to ensure their family lived happily. Throughout his time unconscious, he had been filled with regret for what had transpired, and all he wanted was to apologize. And so, Yang apologized to his father, promising that he would never speak to him that way again. His father laughed and stepped forward to embrace him, as the entire family shared a heartfelt moment, shedding tears of joy. Even Su Ah was astonished, saying that she could hardly believe her mean older brother was acting so kindly. Then, she suddenly burst into tears as well, saying that he was annoying but also kind, and that she was happy their family was whole again. Yang wiped away his tears and laughed, commenting on his sister's strange logic, which made both their parents laugh as well. They told him that Su Ah had always said odd things like this throughout her life, so it wasn't surprising. Yang chuckled and said it seemed like her condition had worsened even further. Su Ah, furious, threatened him, demanding that he take back what he had said. And so, the family was reunited, and Yang returned to his loved ones. After 3 days, he completed his discharge procedures and was finally released from the hospital. Even the doctor himself seemed shocked and couldn't believe how Yang had fully recovered after being bedridden for 5 years, to the point that he even asked if Yang was truly awake. But Yang felt it was best to keep things a secret for now, as he had yet to fully understand his new situation. Therefore, he wasn't ready to reveal everything to a doctor he barely knew. However, he gained something important from this encounter, the doctor's interest in his body's remarkable healing ability. As a result, the doctor offered to cover half of his medical bill if he agreed to visit the hospital once a month for examinations. Yang felt that he had done something noble, as he managed to reduce a major financial burden on his family, though the credit belonged entirely to the primal earth technique. After that, Yang and his sister finally arrived at their home. Su Ah pointed toward the building, explaining that their home was on the very top floor. She added that due to certain circumstances, they had ended up living in this building. She also mentioned that their parents didn't visit the house often, so he was free to choose any room he wanted. Yang was shocked by what he saw. Although his family had been poor in the past, things had never been this bad. He realized that this was all because of him, and his family must have suffered greatly to afford his hospital treatment. At that moment, Yang resolved that he needed to earn money quickly, and in large amounts, to support the family that had sacrificed so much for him. Yang understood that the fastest and most obvious way to make money in this world was to become a hunter. While guardians were primarily responsible for protecting the earth and held a prestigious status, hunters undoubtedly earned far greater profits. However, the current problem was that his physical condition did not allow him to be a hunter at all, especially since he felt extremely fatigued after just a short run. When Yang opened the system window, he received a notification stating that his physical condition was negatively affected due to the prolonged hibernation he had undergone. Realizing this immediately, Yang understood that this was certainly the reason behind his body's weakness and rapid exhaustion, but he refused to let it discourage him. Although some monsters were said to be easy to deal with, he knew he couldn't rely on rumors when it came to his future. So, he decided to work on improving his physical condition as quickly as possible. Fortunately, even the most basic exercises were enough to help him recover, meaning he could overcome this hurdle in no time. More importantly, he was an expert in martial arts, which was an additional advantage in his favor. Over the 15 days following his discharge from the hospital, Yang trained relentlessly, pushing himself to increase his physical capabilities without taking a single break. Since running and the horse stance were among the most fundamental and effective martial arts techniques in the continent of Huan, he was convinced that this was the right path to follow. However, despite all his efforts, neither the effects of his prolonged hibernation nor the contamination of his awakened abilities as a hunter seemed to be diminishing as he had hoped. This left him perplexed, as he couldn't understand why, despite all his training, the contamination rate was decreasing far too slowly compared to the effort he was putting in. He realized that if he continued at this pace, he wouldn't achieve anything at all, and he needed a drastic and decisive solution, especially since his parents and sister, Su Ah, were working themselves to exhaustion because of him. No matter what it took, he needed to make rapid progress within a few days, enough to become a hunter. Since things had come to this point, Yang decided to use the primal earth technique once again. As the fundamental martial arts technique of the continent of Huan, it was considered the best of all foundations, possessing a hidden ability. Aside from stabilizing the body, it also stimulated awakening by pushing the body to its absolute limits. At the same time, it enhanced the body's vital indicators through nature's energy, making it akin to a process of cellular regeneration. However, the problem lay in the fact that surpassing one's physical limits was nearly impossible for an ordinary human. Only 3 individuals in the entire continent of Huan had ever managed to uncover this technique. Some might say that greed was the driving force behind such ambition, but Yang believed that without this kind of determination, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything at all. As Yang was immersed in his training, an elderly woman passed by, looking exhausted. She grumbled about needing to leave this place, complaining that her back ached terribly and that her knees could no longer support her. However, her complaints were suddenly interrupted when she heard Yang's voice. She was utterly shocked when she saw him training, running up the stairs at an astonishing speed. While she could barely take 2 steps, she kept repeating in admiration that the energy of youth was truly amazing. She wished that if she were just 10 years younger, she would be able to climb these stairs with ease and grace, just like that young man who ascended them in mere moments. What a remarkable sight. But Yang wasn't even aware of her presence. He was entirely focused on his goal. He had already decided that he would not take any breaks and would never stop training, nor would he give up, no matter what. As long as he continued on this path with the same determination, he would undoubtedly reach his goal. If pushing beyond his limits was the only way to reach the world he aspired to, then he was fully prepared to persist. It was precisely because of this mindset that he would later be known as the military emperor Laoshan. Yang continued running, ascending and descending the stairs all day until sunset, never stopping despite his exhaustion. As night fell, he kept climbing and descending without pause. His relentless training even caught the attention of passers-by. 2 of them stood on a bridge watching him, amazed at how he could keep running despite his ordinary appearance. Though they didn't know his circumstances, they were so impressed that they wished their children would give up video games and start exercising like him. After a long period of intense and continuous training, Yang was utterly exhausted and could no longer continue, but he kept telling himself that he was very close to achieving his goal. He activated the primal earth technique once again to assess his progress this time, to see whether he had truly reached his limits, or if he still had a long way to go. At that moment, he realized that he was almost there. There was only a little more left, and if he pushed himself just a bit further, he would undoubtedly succeed. Yang was filled with excitement, and his determination was renewed once more. He began climbing the stairs at full speed, completely ignoring his body's exhaustion and need for rest. But as he was running up, he was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected notification from the system window, forcing him to stop and check what had happened. His shock was immense when the system informed him that it had been influenced by his determination and perseverance, granting him an increase in his strength and endurance. At that moment, the special ability of the primal earth technique was activated. Yang felt energy surge through his body, his strength changing in an instant. He was overwhelmed with joy when he realized that his efforts had not been in vain. His level had risen to level 2, and all of his injuries and fatigue had been completely healed. Finally, Yang reached the top of the stairs and let out a victorious shout, affirming that he had been confident in his success. He then received additional system notifications, informing him of its respect for his persistence and determination, and notifying him that the hidden effect of the primal earth technique had been unlocked. And it wasn't just the awakening effect of the primal earth technique that had been activated. He also received a reward from the system in recognition of his achievement. With that, he had fulfilled the first condition for reaching his goal, and he was now closer than ever to becoming a hunter, just as he had hoped. The following day, Yang headed to the Hunters Guild to register himself, planning to arrive early in the morning. However, the process took longer than expected, as he first had to register his skills, and he found the entire concept of skills strange. He couldn't comprehend how one could possess abilities that could be used without understanding or training in martial arts or magic. Because of this, his skill window remained empty until morning. The only skill recorded was the primal earth technique, which he had trained in himself. But after researching the matter, he discovered that most hunters had at least 3 skills, which caused him to panic. As a result, he began training in some combat techniques, all of which were eventually registered as skills. During this period, he learned a lot about the skill system, but he didn't consider it particularly important. If his goal was to earn money quickly, then standing out and being unique wouldn't be a bad idea at all. Inside the evaluation room, the staff member felt bored after conducting countless assessments of awakened individuals throughout the day, most of whom turned out to be ordinary people. However, his thoughts were interrupted when Yang arrived at his desk, informing him that he had come for the awakened assessment test. The staff member sighed and asked him to place his hand on the crystal, explaining that if it lit up, it meant he was awakened. Otherwise, he was just an ordinary person and could leave immediately. Yang was aware that some people often misclassified themselves as awakened, but he was confident that his system window was undeniable proof of his status. And just as he expected, the crystal lit up the moment he touched it, confirming that he was indeed awakened. The staff member was surprised, then congratulated Yang and told him he would assist with his registration immediately. After that, he handed Yang a form, asking him to fill in the required details before returning it. Yang was surprised by how smoothly the process was going, as there weren't any complex requirements. Once he proved he had magic, he was officially recognized as an awakened individual. He sat down and began filling out his details. And once he was done, he returned the form to the staff member. However, he noticed the staff member looking at him strangely, as if he were joking. The staff member then asked if he had come to mess around, stating that it was completely absurd for someone at level 1 to have registered 32 skills. Yang Yang didn't understand what the problem was, so he asked if something was wrong. The staff member explained that the issue wasn't that there was a mistake, but rather that it was entirely illogical. He acknowledged Yang's enthusiasm after awakening, but he emphasized that these matters were not a game. Yang was stunned, realizing that registering 32 skills might have been a bit excessive, though he hadn't expected it to be such a big deal. Worse still, the staff member didn't even believe it was real, prompting Yang to offer to switch his system window to public mode to display it as proof. The staff member responded that such a thing was indeed possible, but he still couldn't grasp exactly what Yang was trying to prove. However, the moment he saw Yang's system window, he was utterly speechless. It displayed more than 10 registered skills, all ranked at A or higher. At that moment, Yang confidently asked if he believed him now. The staff member, now visibly shaken, replied with urgency, confirming that he absolutely believed him and would process his application immediately with the utmost precision. He then apologized repeatedly for not recognizing Yang's abilities and skills earlier. Yang laughed, telling him there was no need for that, and that the matter wasn't worth all this concern. The staff member took Yang's form and brought it to the Hunters Guild director, Wu Xin-Wu, who looked surprised and asked if this was real. The staff member confirmed that it was absolutely true, and that he had seen it with his own eyes. He had never imagined that something like this could be possible. The director, Xin-Wu, laughed and remarked that it had been a long time since such an interesting rookie had appeared. As for Yang, he ran all the way home from the guild, feeling as though his heart might explode. But he couldn't stop. After all, the system's rewards and bonuses were incredible, making him eager to keep going. Initially, he had believed that registering at the guild would allow him to start working as a hunter right away, but he soon discovered that it wasn't that simple. Before anything else, he had to complete a basic training course, a government-enforced policy designed to prevent reckless individuals from entering dungeons without sufficient knowledge or preparation. As such, carelessness often led to numerous deaths. The hunter's training course started at the end of each month, and since today was the 26th, that meant Yang had 5 days before the course began. Although he kept telling himself that he didn't need such training, he wasn't in a position to argue or justify why he should be exempt from it. However, until then, all he had to do was continue training his body and increasing his strength as much as possible. Yang was determined to achieve that, not just for his family, but for himself as well. The 5 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Yang headed to the gathering site for the start of the training course, only to find himself among approximately 50 people, far more than he had expected. He had heard that most people avoided this training due to the risks involved, but in the end, it didn't matter to him. Everyone was free to make their own choices. However, Yang suddenly sensed a strange presence surrounding him, a distinct energy unlike anyone else's in the gathering. At that very moment, an elf woman stepped onto the platform and instructed everyone to look forward and listen to what she had to say. The attendees were surprised to see an elf among them, addressing the group directly. Others, however, were both astonished and excited to witness an elf in person for the first time. Yang, on the other hand, remained somewhat reserved. The mere fact that he could sense her aura before she even reached the platform was remarkable. Even though he had lost all his cultivation techniques, he had been completely unable to detect her presence until she spoke. This meant that she wasn't just fast, she was almost invisible, or perhaps using a special technique unique to elves. But in the end, that wasn't what mattered to him. He simply found the entire situation intriguing. At that moment, the elf woman took notice of Yang, or rather, she had been searching for him among the attendees from the start. The guild had specifically instructed her to observe and monitor him closely, and now she understood why. Despite being only at level 1, he had still managed to sense her presence, even if only for a brief moment, as she moved through the crowd. Never before, even among the most promising elf trainees, had she encountered someone with such abilities. This time, things might actually be interesting. Clearing her throat, the elf then requested silence and the full attention of the trainees, expressing her pleasure in meeting them all. She explained that she had received a special request from Korea, and that she would be overseeing this basic training course. She then introduced herself as Shahar Kal Wariath from the Elven Kingdom of Finium, although her time with them would be short. She looked forward to working with the people of Earth. She also requested that they call her simply Instructor Shar when addressing her, as repeating her full name would be too cumbersome for them. Yang chuckled to himself, thinking that Shar sounded more like the name of a pet dog, but it was still somewhat fitting. Instructor Shar explained that this was the first time an elf had been assigned to train humans, so it was natural for them to have some questions. While she understood this, due to time constraints, she would only answer the first 3 questions asked. At that moment, one of the trainees immediately raised her hand, eager to ask her question. The young woman introduced herself as Baek Ai-yoon and stated that she was 19 years old, surprising the crowd, as that age was considered quite young for a hunter. Shar welcomed her warmly, expressing her pleasure in meeting her, and then invited her to ask her question. Smiling, Yoon said that rather than a question, she wanted to state that Instructor Shar was not only the most beautiful being she had ever seen, but also the most stunning elven instructor in the world. Shar laughed, commenting that this was an unusual way to express oneself, especially since she had asked for a question, but instead received a compliment on her appearance. She then added that, as the heir of the prestigious Kal Wariath family, she preferred to be seen as a warrior, rather than just a beautiful woman. She then requested that the trainees raise their hands to ask the second question, and many of them did so. Shar chose a young man with red hair, stating that he had been the first to raise his hand, so he had the right to ask his question. Yang glanced at him, and thought to himself that while the guy might have an old-fashioned air about him, he personally disliked tattoos, and the man's peculiar appearance. The young man introduced himself as Jin Chang-hyuk, and admitted that his question might be a bit strange, especially considering how far he had traveled to be there. However, he wanted to know if someone with a criminal record could still participate in the training, as he had read that this depended on the discretion of the course instructor. Instructor Shar asked if by criminal record he meant that he had committed a crime, then inquired about the nature of the offense. Jin responded that he had been convicted of theft, but clarified that he did not condone stealing or illegal activities in any way. Instructor Shar responded, assuring him that he would not be treated unfairly because of his past, as things were different in Elvenheim. In Elven society, criminals were given two choices, either to serve their clan or to fight on the battlefield to protect it. Since he was here among the trainees, it meant he had chosen the second option, which in Elvenheim was known as the concept of Randar. On Earth, the closest equivalent in their language would be honorable atonement. If he had committed a crime, he would have to work harder than anyone else to fulfill his duties, but he must never forget his crime. Instead, he should always remember it and act honorably based on his past. Crime might be difficult to erase, but that didn't mean forgiveness was impossible. Hyuk thanked her for her words, and Instructor Shar then asked everyone to raise their hands for the third and final question of the day. However, she was surprised to see Yang's hand already raised before she had even finished her sentence. She asked for his name and his question. Yang introduced himself, and Shar responded by saying that she already knew who he was. In fact, she was personally quite interested in him. Upon hearing these words, the other trainees started murmuring among themselves, wondering if Yang knew the instructor and whether something unusual was happening. Yang himself was puzzled and asked what she meant by having a special interest in him. Shar chuckled and asked if that was really the question he wanted to ask. Yang denied it, clarifying that he had something else to ask. She then invited him to proceed with his question, so he asked whether she would be personally training all of them. Instructor Shar replied that she certainly would not be doing so, though she understood why he asked. While she was indeed the head instructor, she wouldn't be able to teach all subjects to such a large number of trainees on her own. For that reason, she would be relying on the assistance of Earthborn trainers. As for practical training, she would only be able to oversee a single team. Yang understood her explanation and found it similar to a school principal who supervised only one class, making him think it was quite interesting. Instructor Shar then announced that the question session had concluded and that they would now move on to the next session. However, she was interrupted by one of the trainees. Speaking in a mocking tone, he expressed his doubts about her and his lack of confidence in her abilities as an instructor, saying that it made perfect sense. After all, she wasn't even human, so why should they trust her and her training methods? She wasn't one of the trusted local trainers, unlike the previous instructor. He then added, pointing at her delicate features, that he doubted she could even fight in the first place. She looked more suited for anything else but the battlefield. Instructor Shar felt a surge of irritation at his words and told him that if he needed proof, she would provide it immediately. At that moment, she activated her ability, releasing a green mist of energy, directing it toward the man and everyone else in the area. The moment the mist touched them, they felt their bodies freeze, unable to move or stand properly. Even breathing became difficult, and they could no longer draw air into their lungs as easily as before. Instructor Shar stated that seeking evidence and questioning things was important, but in her view, discipline and respect were just as crucial. She then issued a stern warning to the man, telling him that this would be the last time she tolerated such insolence. He might not have realized his mistake this time, but if it happened again, she would show no mercy. However, what truly caught her attention was that Yang remained completely unaffected by the mist, as if it had never touched him at all. Instructor Shar was stunned that he had withstood the mist's effects, even though it was only meant as a warning. It was impossible for a level 1 hunter, who had never stepped onto a battlefield, to resist the mist's influence so effortlessly. Given this, she realized that she wouldn't just have to watch him, she might even need to take him with her into battle. Yang sensed that something was off, and felt that perhaps he should have pretended to collapse like the others instead of standing alone, drawing unwanted attention. Meanwhile, Instructor Shar was still deep in thought. She considered that courage and composure had nothing to do with skill, and rather than making a rash decision she might regret, she decided to keep observing him for now. After that, she lifted the mist's effects and addressed the trainees, saying that this concluded their orientation day. However, during the training course, she expected them to keep smiles on their faces and to maintain a positive attitude at all times. She then waved at them and said she would see them in the next session, reminding them to take care of themselves until then. The next day, the trainees finally began their training course, with the first lesson focusing on a feline-type monster. Yang found it difficult to concentrate, as it had been a long time since he last sat in a classroom. All he wanted was for this theoretical lesson to end quickly, so they could move on to the practical training as soon as possible. However, Instructor Shar was present in the class and immediately noticed his lazy demeanor. Without hesitation, she used her ability to jolt him awake. Yang realized that he had dozed off out of boredom, and that Shar had punished him as a warning not to repeat the behavior. The truth was, he had never been good at studying or theoretical subjects in the first place. While trying to avoid looking at the board, his eyes accidentally met Hyuk's gaze. Hyuk quickly looked away, pretending as if nothing had happened, as if their eye contact had been nothing more than a coincidence. But Yang noticed that Hyuk had been looking at his books and notes, making him think that Hyuk might be more than just a tattooed, muscular guy. However, his thoughts were abruptly interrupted when Instructor Shar struck him again for daydreaming a second time. She yelled at him to focus on the lesson and not drift off again, warning that this would be his final caution. Yang sighed and turned to the board with reluctance, feeling that Shar was far too strict and aggressive, making it clear that getting along with her wouldn't be easy. Finally, after some time, the lesson ended, and the instructor advised them to review what they had learned and not let the material pile up. He also pointed out that there was a reason why some students failed the exams every year. As he thought to himself, he found it surprising that this class was so focused on theoretical lessons. It was the first time he had seen such engagement, and he wished all classes were like this. After the lecture ended, Yang began gathering his books and notes, preparing to leave, but Yoon interrupted him by calling out to him. She greeted him cheerfully, then told him that she had been observing him for a while. Yang was caught off guard and flustered, accidentally referring to her as a middle schooler without realizing it. This infuriated Yoon, who angrily corrected him, stating that she was in high school and calling him an old man in return. Yang laughed awkwardly, apologizing and admitting that he now remembered she was 19 years old. She confirmed that she was indeed 19, and then asked if he knew why she was talking to him now. Yang asked if she needed something, to which she replied that during the scolding from instructor Shar, he had been the only one who managed to withstand her aura. Yang was surprised by her observation, as he had assumed no one had noticed. However, Hyuk chimed in, stating that he had also noticed and found it impressive. Yoon commented that she had been amazed and wondered if his heart was made of metal. How else could he have endured it? Yang replied that his heart was just like anyone else's, and he was simply lucky, nothing more. Yoon demanded that he stop pretending and admit that he had been incredible, while Hyuk added that his humility was an admirable trait. Yang then asked if that was why Hyuk had been sneaking glances at him during the lecture. Hyuk quickly apologized, assuring him that he hadn't meant to be intrusive. He was just genuinely impressed. At that moment, Yang began reconsidering his initial judgment of Hyuk, realizing that he might not just be a heavily tattooed, muscular guy, he might actually be a respectable person. As Yang picked up his belongings and prepared to leave, Yoon stopped him and suggested that they all go have lunch together, especially since they had been the question trio on the first day. Yang, already walking away, replied that he was busy at the moment, and that they could make up for it later. He then used his ability to move swiftly, prompting Yoon to chase after him, telling him that he must be joking if he was actually using his powers just to escape. Hyuk laughed, remarking that the scene looked like something straight out of a movie. Annoyed, Yoon called Yang a rude old man. And so, the theoretical lessons continued for a full 30 days, an unchangeable and non-negotiable duration. As it was part of the national education system, Yang felt that the best course of action was to pass the exam quickly and move on to the practical training. However, what puzzled him was that a surprisingly large number of people failed the test every year. To avoid that, he studied as much as possible, and thanks to instructor Shar, he had no choice but to pay attention in class, whether he wanted to or not. Because of this, the theoretical instructors expected this batch to achieve the highest success rate ever. However, that didn't mean everyone would pass. Even if the written exams were easy, no one could succeed without proper studying. At the end of the day, Yoon approached Yang and told him that there were rumors suggesting that those who failed the exams once would fail them forever. She expressed her fear that there might be a terrifying curse at play and asked if he felt the same concern. Yang simply replied that the solution was straightforward. They just had to avoid failing. He was certain there was a more logical reason why people failed, but their conversation was interrupted by laughter. They soon realized that a group of hunters was making plans to go out for dinner and have some drinks, deciding to worry about the exams later. They were confident they could grasp the entire syllabus eventually. Yang told Yoon that he would be leaving first and wouldn't be able to join the gathering that had been planned for the night due to the exams. Yoon sighed and remarked that he was truly a cold person and that he should learn to relax a little. Yang left feeling relieved that he had a good excuse. His top priority was spending time with his family, and he wouldn't allow himself to waste that opportunity again. After a full month had passed, the time for the theoretical exams finally arrived. Everyone took the test, and now they waited for the results. Hyuk mentioned that the results would be announced on the same day as the exam, which made him extremely anxious and fearful of the outcome. Yoon too was tense and nervous, whispering prayers softly but audibly. Hyuk asked her to stop making those noises, as he was already on edge and couldn't handle more stress. Yoon then asked if her words were making him angry. He replied that he was incredibly irritated, and the moment he said that, Yoon started annoying him even more. Hyuk snapped at her, and the two began chasing each other and bickering, until Yang stepped in to stop them, telling them to calm down since the results were about to be posted. The results were finally displayed, and tension filled the air. However, all three of their names were among the list of those who had passed. Yoon jumped with joy and started celebrating their success. Yang commented that she always acted like a child and was constantly playing around, yet now her name was at the top. Yoon confidently responded that a truly skilled person worked in the shadows, unnoticed by others. Yang replied that she had a point to some extent. Then, he turned toward Hyuk, who was in tears, overwhelmed with joy that he had finally passed the exams. Now, he could proudly tell his younger siblings that he had achieved something significant. Yang thought to himself that, while Hyuk might seem flashy on the outside, deep down, he was a kind and noble person. Since they had been sitting next to each other in class, they had gradually grown closer, giving Yang the opportunity to learn his story. He discovered that Hyuk was the sole provider for his three younger siblings. His father had died due to alcohol addiction, and his mother had run away from home after enduring years of abuse at the hands of her drunken husband. Because of this, Hyuk had taken on the responsibility of caring for his siblings since his second year of high school. People often said that the harsh environment he grew up in had shaped his tough exterior, but in truth, he wasn't a bad person at all. On the contrary, he was responsible and good-hearted. He had even resorted to theft once just to feed his siblings, and when he was released from prison, he immediately started working to repay his debts, proving that he was a decent person. Yang told Hyuk that he had gone through a lot, and since he was physically gifted, he only needed an extra push to reach his goal. Hyuk wiped his tears and thanked Yang, saying that none of this would have been possible without his support, advice, and encouragement. Yang laughed shyly and told him that he hadn't done anything, that everything Hyuk had achieved was the result of his own efforts. But Hyuk disagreed, saying that watching Yang push himself to his limits had been an inspiration for him, which was why he owed him so much. Yang laughed playfully and told him to stop flattering him. Such words would never fool him. Yoon enthusiastically interrupted them, announcing with excitement that the three of them would finally be moving on to the training phase of the course. Hyuk thanked her and expressed his gratitude, acknowledging that she had always helped him study after classes, and her assistance had not been in vain. Yoon responded by saying that they were friends, and there was no need for formalities between them. Yang was surprised to realize that she had been helping Hyuk with his studies as well. At that moment, Hyuk received a call from his younger siblings, who wanted to know if he had passed. Excitedly, Hyuk reassured them that he had succeeded, just as he had promised. He told them that the hardest part was over, and that only a little remained. Yang felt that he should bring him back to reality, but he decided to let him enjoy this moment a little longer. Yang considered another thought. Out of 49 trainees, 42 had passed. Despite the normal passing rate being only 50%, it was clear that Instructor Shar and her strict teaching methods had significantly influenced this outcome. She might indeed be an expert in education and training. However, in any case, the real and most crucial challenge would begin the following week with the start of practical training, making things even more intriguing. The week passed in the blink of an eye, and the training phase of the course began. Instructor Shar welcomed her team, announcing that she would be in charge of Team 8. Since they were already familiar with each other, there was no need for introductions, and they could move directly to the lesson. Hyuk expressed his surprise at how they had all ended up in the same team, even though he wasn't entirely sure how it had happened. Instructor Shar responded, explaining that she had personally designed the teams and determined that it was best to group similar individuals together. As for her role as the supervisor of Team 8, that had been left entirely to fate. She had chosen this team by lottery, and it seemed their destinies were already intertwined. Yoon beamed with joy, saying she was happy that fate had brought them together, along with such an amazing instructor. Instructor Shar replied that fate was indeed fascinating, but that didn't mean she would show any mercy during today's training. Both Hyuk and Yoon immediately sensed the sudden change in the atmosphere and in Instructor Shar's aura, assuming a battle-ready stance. Yang also noticed this shift and realized that Shar was about to begin training immediately. Her aura was overwhelmingly strong, making it feel like they were about to enter an actual battle, rather than just a training exercise. Instructor Shar then announced that their task for the day would be to enter a gate. She asked Hyuk if he could define what a gate was. Hyuk answered that gates were entrances to other worlds, to which Instructor Shar confirmed that he was correct. However, she added that not all gates were the same. She then turned to Yang and asked if he remembered the topic of last week's final lecture. Yang responded that gates were generally divided into two types, friendly gates and hostile gates. Among hostile gates, they were categorized into levels ranging from 1 to 13, with higher levels indicating increased danger. Instructor Shar praised him, stating that it was a good sign that even the students who had been less attentive in class could now answer correctly. She then announced that the team would be entering a level 1 hostile gate today. Turning to Yoon, she asked what defined a level 1 gate. Yoon answered that level 1 gates were the lowest ranked, meaning they contained weaker monsters with lower density. For this reason, they were currently used as training dungeons for candidates like them. Instructor Shar then asked if she believed that meant the dungeon would be easy. Yoon, with excessive enthusiasm, confidently declared that it would be an extremely easy dungeon, and they would clear it quickly. Instructor Shar's tone shifted as she asked if Yoon thought that meant the monsters inside were incapable of killing humans. Yang interjected, stating that the monsters inside the gate could definitely kill people. After all, they were gate monsters. Instructor Shar confirmed his answer, emphasizing that the creatures inside were indeed capable of killing them. For that reason, she explained, monsters emitted something known as killing intent or murderous intent. She then unleashed a hostile aura. Both Yoon and Hyuk immediately felt it but were unable to withstand it. However, while Yang could feel it, he showed no signs of being affected. This caught Instructor Shar's attention. Despite the sheer intensity of the killing intent she had released, Yang had managed to endure it and remain standing firmly. Yang noticed her gaze and wondered whether he should pretend to be affected or struggling. He then began acting as if he was truly overwhelmed by her aura. However, Instructor Shar quickly noticed what he was doing and told him there was no need to fake his struggle against her aura. She explained that, although this experience might be something they had never seen or felt before, as trainees, they had to start getting used to it. After all, as she had previously mentioned, monsters could easily kill humans. If they couldn't adapt to the killing intent emitted by these creatures, they would, unfortunately, die much faster than they anticipated. But she encouraged them, saying they had done well and looked prepared, except for one person. In any case, she hadn't expected everyone to withstand her hostile killing intent. Therefore, she needed to ask, had any of them ever been in an actual battlefield before? Yang replied that he had experienced something similar. Shar responded that a mere similar experience wouldn't be enough to endure real killing intent, and that he was clearly hiding something. However, she didn't mind if someone had secrets, as long as they had the necessary skills and endurance to back them up. Afterward, the trainees followed Instructor Shar, preparing to head to the training gate. She informed them that if they ran at full speed, they could reach their destination, the Mapo Station gate, within an hour. Yang was shocked and asked if she meant they had to run the entire way. Shar replied that she didn't know how to use public transportation, nor did she know how to drive. Besides, running was an excellent warm-up before real battles. Since Yang Soo-hyuk was the leader of Team 8, he was responsible for leading his teammates to their destination. 1 hour from now, they would meet at Mapo Station. She would go ahead first and instructed them not to be late. Then, Within moments, Instructor Shar disappeared before their eyes. Yang sighed, realizing they had no choice but to run. As Yoon tried to protest, saying she didn't want to run all the way there, she found that Yang and Hyuk had already taken off. She screamed at them to stop and not leave her behind. Finally, after an entire hour of running, they arrived at the designated location, all feeling utterly exhausted. Instructor Shar told them they had arrived sooner than expected, an impressive result for beginner trainees like them. As a reward, she granted them a 10-minute break before starting their training. Hyuk and Yoon collapsed onto the ground immediately. Hyuk groaned that he had nearly lost consciousness from exhaustion, and Yoon agreed. However, Yang noticed that just a while ago, their bodies had been stiff and tense from their first encounter with killing intent. Yet, after such an intense run, their muscles had loosened up. This made him wonder, had Instructor Shar done this on purpose? If so, she might be an even more skilled and brilliant trainer than they had imagined. It seemed that the title of Chief Instructor was not merely an honorary one. After 10 minutes had passed, Instructor Shar called out to them, announcing that their break was over and asking if they were ready to proceed. The trainees responded that they were completely ready. Shar then began opening the entrance to the gate and informed them that they were about to begin. Thus, Yang, Hyuk, and Yoon prepared to enter the gate at Mapo Station, known as Level 1 Mujio. Its true name meant the Boundless Realm. During their theoretical studies, Yang had learned some intriguing facts, namely, that there were multiple dimensions in this world, known as Mujio. These were abandoned realms, unworthy of even having names, as they were entirely deserted. However, from what he had learned, even these abandoned worlds sometimes contained remnants of once thriving, intelligent civilizations. This made him wonder, could the Mujio worlds have been formed from the destruction of other realms? It was certainly a possibility. No one knew anything concrete about the worlds beyond the gates, but none of that mattered now. This was Yang's first time entering a gate, and it seemed like it would be an exciting experience. Since the Mujio gate was located at Mapo Station, the temperature there was incredibly low, reaching -2 degrees Celsius, making the air freezing cold. Upon entering the alternate dimension, Instructor Shar informed them that from this moment forward, she would step back. However, they still didn't know exactly where the enemy would appear from. Because of this, they had to move with extreme caution, as the creatures in this world were known as Naro. These were four-legged beasts belonging to the canine family, standing at approximately 3 meters tall, as expected from dogs. Their primary method of attack was biting. One of their most notable traits was their ability to leap high, and they typically moved in packs of 3 to 5. Yang considered that, while this was indeed a level 1 dungeon, handling such monsters would be difficult for beginners like them. However, from his personal perspective, these creatures posed no real threat to him. What made him so confident was that, thanks to his intense training and preparation for the theoretical exams, his level had increased significantly. More importantly, the awakening effect from mastering the Black Saga of internal meridians was astonishingly powerful. Yang noticed that the system had granted him a new special ability. He recalled how embarrassed he had initially felt about it, but its impact on his strength was undeniably remarkable. Compared to ordinary awakened individuals, his combat power was considerably higher, and when combined with his expertise in martial arts and battlefield awareness, his actual combat ability was on par with high-tier second-class warriors, perhaps even close to first-class level. Since he had managed to regain this level of strength in just 1 month, there was no reason for him to lack confidence in a level 1 dungeon. Suddenly, Yang sensed something unusual. He immediately instructed everyone to stop and remain still, realizing that they were no longer alone. A small group of cub-like creatures was approaching them, as if welcoming their arrival. Hyuk and Yoon were startled. They hadn't even fully entered the dungeon yet, and they were already facing monsters. Hyuk noted that there were 5 of these creatures, despite them barely having started. Instructor Shar responded, saying that at their current level, they should be able to handle them without receiving a single scratch. There was no need to be nervous, they just needed to focus. Then, she raised her voice and ordered Team 8 to prepare for battle immediately, instructing them not to rush and to attack only when the creatures were within their line of sight. Yang found the situation dull. He knew that if he fought these creatures alone, he could eliminate them in an instant. However, he had to follow instructions for now. Still, something caught his attention. Hyuk and Yoon had no weapons. This was strange since he had heard that weapons were provided during training for those who needed them. Personally, he had chosen not to wield a weapon, as he was more comfortable fighting barehanded. Did this mean that Hyuk and Yoon also had abilities that made weapons unnecessary for them? Finally, the creatures came within range. Instructor Shar instructed them to be fully prepared and attack immediately. At that moment, Hyuk lunged at the creatures, and within seconds, sharp claws extended from his hands. Yang was astonished. He was certain that Hyuk had entered the battle without a weapon, so when did he manifest these claws? Then, he turned toward Yoon and saw her using magical energy, realizing that she was likely a support or healing type fighter. Not a bad role at all. Yang felt his excitement rising. He couldn't afford to fall behind them. He had to move now. Activating his ability, he executed Storm Leap, instantly closing the distance between himself and the creatures. Hyuk was surprised at how quickly Yang caught up with him, but Yang wanted to take advantage of this situation to test his progress and his newly enhanced physical state. He launched a powerful strike at one of the Naro beasts, using one of his newly learned techniques, shattering Iron Palm. He then followed up with Shockwave Strike, taking down another beast. While he was occupied in combat, one of the creatures suddenly dashed toward him at high speed, attacking from his blind spot. However, thanks to his quick reflexes and sharp instincts, Yang leaped into the air before the Naro beast could reach him. He then prepared to unleash a new technique, Channeling energy into his legs, he executed Windbreaker, landing a devastating blow directly onto the Naro's head, eliminating it instantly without mercy. Yang stood proudly after single-handedly eliminating 2 Naro beasts in the blink of an eye. A moment of silence filled the air as no one could believe what they had just witnessed. Hyuk and Yoon considered it nothing short of insanity. Even Instructor Shar herself found it hard to believe that such power was coming from a mere trainee. She realized that his actions were far from those of an ordinary recruit. In fact, they weren't even human-like. Meanwhile, Yang noticed that the battle wasn't over yet, as another beast was approaching from behind. He activated his ability once more to accelerate his movement, dashing toward it at full speed. Even the Naro beast itself was stunned by Yang's sudden arrival, and braced itself to attack. However, Yang enhanced his energy, and prepared to strike with the basic Iron Fist technique. He then escalated the attack into a rapid series of lethal punches, unleashing his aggressive combat style without hesitation. This left Instructor Shar puzzled as she tried to suppress her thoughts, yet she couldn't help but feel the urge to take him back to Elvenheim with her. Yang smiled confidently, realizing that thanks to his previous martial arts training, his body had fully adapted to this offensive approach, and his reflexes had become exceptional. Undoubtedly, his newly integrated system had played a crucial role in this transformation. This made him wonder if he could head straight to the Huan continent now. After all, he was still on par with most first-class martial artists. As he looked ahead, he saw that only 2 beasts remained. He felt no challenge in taking them down himself, but he understood that this was a team training exercise. If he finished them off, he would undermine the purpose of the session. For him, this was merely a test, but for the others, it was a crucial opportunity to gain real combat experience. Thus, he decided to step back and let them handle it. Hyuk and Yoon were surprised by his decision but quickly understood his reasoning. They realized he was giving them a chance to test their own capabilities as well. Excited by this, Hyuk declared that he would take down the remaining beasts himself. He extended his claws and prepared to attack. Charging toward one of the Naro beasts, he activated his ability, sharpening his claws and enhancing their cutting power. With a single fiery swipe, he sliced the creature in half. However, that was just one beast. As he turned his back to the second one, despite Yoon's desperate warning, the beast managed to sink its teeth into him. Though Hyuk reacted quickly and partially avoided the bite, it still caught his arm. In response, he used his other hand to slash the beast's throat with his claws. He then expressed his surprise at the creature's speed, wondering how he hadn't noticed it. The situation was immediately brought under control as Yoon, using her healing ability, stopped the bleeding in an instant and treated his wound. Hyuk was astonished. There was no trace of the injury, no bleeding, making him realize just how effective Yoon's healing magic truly was. As they recovered from their first battle, they were suddenly confronted with 5 additional beasts, the second wave, rushing toward them at high speed. They were given no time to catch their breath after the initial fight. However, unfortunately for the beasts, Team 8 had already adjusted to the combat environment and fully immersed themselves in battle mode. The only thought in their minds now was clearing the dungeon as quickly as possible. Thus, after completing their training session in the dungeon, Instructor Shar and Team 8 emerged from the dimension. Exhausted from their first real battle against dungeon creatures, their only desire now was to return and rest. Yang fully understood how they felt, especially since they had fought 6 consecutive battles within the dungeon, an intense first experience in a real battlefield. Instructor Shar, filled with enthusiasm, told them that she was proud of them all. They truly lived up to the reputation she had heard about. Earth's Awakened were exceptional and impressive. The trainees looked at her in confusion, so she continued, explaining that despite their endurance being pushed to its limits, their combat skills had improved tremendously. Such growth was rare, even in actual battles, proving that they truly possessed extraordinary potential. Yang agreed with this observation, as he had noticed that both Hyuk and Yoon became more proficient as the battle intensified. Even for him, despite his mastery of martial arts, the system played a fundamental role in his development. It wasn't just natural talent. Instructor Shar then told them that she believed they would soon be capable of participating in real raids, and as their instructor, she was immensely proud of them. Now, they could return home with their heads held high, proud of their outstanding achievements. The trainees felt a surge of happiness, their energy returning after hearing Instructor Shar's encouraging words. They were also relieved that this grueling training session had finally ended. However, Instructor Shar stopped Yang, asking him to wait a moment, as she wanted to speak with him briefly. She began by saying that, based on what she had just witnessed, it was evident that his combat style didn't rely on the system at all. Instead, it seemed highly disciplined and deeply rooted in martial arts principles. She asked him if her assumption was incorrect. Yang remained silent for a moment, prompting her to reassure him that if he didn't wish to answer, he wasn't obligated to, and that she wouldn't be upset in any way. But then, he responded, confirming that he had indeed learned martial arts. Instructor Shar was somewhat surprised, as the records indicated that Yang had been in a coma for 5 years and had only recently awakened. It didn't make sense for him to have learned martial arts in such a short period, but the world was full of mysteries, and there were many things beyond her comprehension. Noticing her prolonged silence, Yang asked if there was a problem. She denied it, explaining that she simply found him fascinating and extraordinarily talented. She also expressed her admiration for how he had ensured that his team members gained real combat experience, just like him. Yang replied that it was only natural. He was the team leader, and it was his duty to be worthy of that responsibility. Instructor Shar responded that not everyone was capable of fulfilling their duties properly, but he wasn't one of those people. He was someone truly deserving of admiration and respect. Yang felt embarrassed by Instructor Shar's praise, especially since she wasn't simply flattering him. He told her she was exaggerating a little. However, she assured him that she meant every word, then bid him farewell, and told him to return home safely. As Yang walked back, he found himself thinking about Instructor Shar, realizing that elves would always be elves, beings of unmatched beauty. He had never seen such beauty before, not even in the Huan continent. But he quickly dismissed his thoughts about Instructor Shar, reminding himself that this wasn't the time for such distractions. What mattered most was that today's results had been highly satisfying. At the same time, he felt an increasing greed and a stronger desire to improve, which was entirely logical. After all, until recently, he had been considered the greatest martial artist in the history of the Huan continent. Though he was catching up quickly, the insatiable thirst within him remained. Still, he knew he shouldn't rush things. Being impatient now wouldn't accelerate his progress in any way. What he needed was to take his time and advance step by step. Thus, after the resounding success of Team 8 in their first gate, they continued venturing into different gates. Yang realized that if he maintained this pace, he would soon be able to earn nearly 10 million won per month. Even though it was only their third day, their team had already cleared dungeons of both level 1 and level 2, and had defeated a significant number of monsters. Additionally, Yang had been collecting the loot and resources obtained from each gate, and selling them to buyers. Since the bodies of monsters found in gates held value for certain traders, he decided to keep his earnings a secret from his family for the time being, planning to inform them at the right moment. Yoon interrupted his thoughts as she approached and asked if he was feeling all right. Yang was surprised by her question, but reassured her that he was completely fine. He then asked why she had said that. She replied that he seemed tense or overly excited, likely because he had single-handedly killed a large number of goblins. She then told him that he had gone a little overboard. Yang responded by saying that he had done it because, in the end, all of it meant more money, and he hadn't even realized how caught up he had been in the fight. Instructor Shar interrupted them, saying that his current condition was somewhat concerning and that he shouldn't be pushing himself like this. Yoon then commented that she felt envious of both of them because they had managed to adapt to the situation so quickly. She was especially surprised by Hyuk, who had initially struggled just like her, but now seemed completely accustomed to it. Yang noticed the truth in Yoon's words, and considered that Hyuk was likely doing all of this for the sake of money and his siblings. However, his thoughts were suddenly interrupted when he spotted a sharp arrow flying rapidly toward Hyuk. At the last moment, Yang managed to catch the arrow before it could strike Hyuk with a fatal blow. But as soon as he grasped it, he felt something strange. There was something wrong with this arrow. It didn't seem like an arrow fired by goblins or any other monsters. More likely, the one who had shot it was human. Moments later, two individuals emerged from the trees. They had been preparing to attack the goblins but found that they had already been wiped out, leaving them frustrated. One of them remarked that if he had managed to kill just one more goblin, he would have leveled up. The other replied that they should have come here first. Yang was surprised to see members of the third squad in the same gate as them, but before he could dwell on it, Jin, the trainee who had fired the arrow, appeared and asked if they were the 8th squad. Instructor Shar confirmed this, and then asked if they were the 3rd squad under the leadership of Jun Soo-jung. However, she was puzzled since she hadn't requested any assistance or involvement from them. So why were they here now? Chol Yu responded that since they were already in the area, they simply decided to join in, stating that it wasn't necessary to file an official request to participate. Meanwhile, Young Wook added that Instructor Shar wasn't even their instructor, so this had nothing to do with her. Yoon was furious and shouted that what they had done was a mistake and had put Hyuk's life in danger. Jin apologized sincerely, assuring them that it hadn't been intentional at all. At that moment, a 4th person appeared, saying that since no one had been harmed, an apology should be sufficient. He then added that Instructor Shar surely had no intention of scolding or punishing his team. The voice belonged to Jun Soo-jung, the instructor of the 3rd squad and a member of the Emoji Guild. Instructor Shar replied that this was only natural. While she was currently responsible for the 8th squad, she was also in charge of educating and guiding all the trainees. Jun Soo-jung responded by saying that this was such a cold answer, just what she expected from the Flower of Death. However, she insisted that what had happened wasn't a big deal. Trainees made mistakes, and no serious harm had occurred. Instructor Shar countered that even if it was just a mistake, what had happened posed a clear threat to a trainee's life. Therefore, a formal apology was required. Moreover, unregulated interference in an honorable battle was also a major issue. Jun Soo-jung replied that Shar had an outdated and rigid way of thinking, which was why she didn't enjoy talking to elves. But in any case, she believed the matter was settled, and that everyone should stay within their boundaries. Instructor Shar responded that she hadn't realized it before, but she wasn't just the instructor of the 8th squad, she was the lead instructor for the entire training program. So if anyone was overstepping their boundaries here, it certainly wasn't her. Jun Soo-jung retorted with a sarcastic tone, saying that it was truly difficult to communicate with elders like her, who always viewed themselves as superior to everyone else. Regardless, she said they could take the loot and dungeon rewards, those cheap, filthy things, because none of her team members wanted them. And if Shar didn't like what had happened, she could file an official complaint with the Emoji Guild. However, she didn't want to hear any more pointless arguments, so she and her squad left. Even though Instructor Shar called after her, she didn't turn back. At the end of the day, the trainees finally departed after completing their training session, but Hyuk stopped Yang to thank him for what he had done during the battle. Yang responded that he hadn't done anything worth thanking. Still, Hyuk insisted on expressing his gratitude again, emphasizing that thanks to Yang, he had avoided a serious injury. Because of that, he was determined to invite him to dinner that night. Yang laughed and told him there was no need for that. However, Yoon interrupted them angrily, expressing her frustration that they were planning to leave her behind again. She pointed out that the last time this happened, they had left together without waiting waiting to celebrate their first mission as a team. Yang was surprised to realize that there was a team celebration in the first place, saying that he had assumed everyone would just leave. Hyuk also confirmed that he had thought the same. Yoon then told them that from now on, they must leave together and wait for her. She added that last time, she had only gone to the bathroom, and when she returned, she found that they were already gone. Yang responded by suggesting that they all go out for dinner together that night. Yoon was surprised but quickly agreed, adding that since he had earned a lot today, he should definitely treat them. Hyuk immediately agreed, and the day passed without any further incidents. The next day, the 8th squad headed out for a new training mission. With each goblin Yang defeated, his stats increased, and his level rose. He noticed that with every point he gained, he became stronger than before. Now, having fully adjusted to the system and combat, it seemed he would soon return to being a top-tier fighter. Just as Yang thought this was the right time to inform his family, he suddenly felt something strange. When he looked beside him, he discovered that an arrow had been aimed at him, but thanks to Instructor Shar, he was not hit. Instructor Shar spoke in a dark, angry tone, saying that she had noticed Instructor Soo-jung appearing more frequently than usual lately. Soo-jung responded in a cold, taunting manner, saying that she was sorry, but it wasn't up to her, and in any case, this wasn't just a mistake. Jin apologized for shooting the arrow, explaining that she had aimed in that direction because the instructor had ordered her to, and she hadn't known they were there. Instructor Shar then turned to Instructor Soo-jung, stating that this seemed like a clear and deliberate provocation. Soo-jung replied that they were the ones who started the provocation yesterday, especially after she learned that Shar had contacted the guild leader the day before. Instructor Shar countered that those who make mistakes must take responsibility for their actions. Soo-jung lost her temper, exclaiming that it was impossible to reason with Shar, adding that perhaps it would be best if she simply killed them all and freed herself from this headache. However, Instructor Shar remained calm, saying that she understood that Soo-jung disliked her personally, but now, her actions had crossed the line entirely. Then, she mentioned Song-moon Hyuk, questioning whether Soo-jung was still infatuated with that person. At this, Soo-jung erupted in a furious outburst, yelling at Shar to be quiet and not speak another word. The sudden tension and pressure in the air caught everyone off guard. Yang was stunned when he realized that the reason behind this tension, and perhaps even their conflict, might be jealousy, and that their feud could be related to admiration or love. Instructor Shar then told Soo-jung that the guild she was relying on, Imugi, wouldn't protect her forever, and advised her to apologize and back down now before it was too late. Soo-jung, seething with anger, asked what Shar would do if she refused. Would she kill her, perhaps? Instructor Shar replied that things would never escalate to that point, but Soo-jung did deserve appropriate punishment for her actions. At this, Soo-jung completely lost her composure, and sarcastically asked how Shar could be so arrogant, wondering how someone like her could aspire to the sky while still stuck at the bottom. Then, without hesitation, she began using her magical techniques, launching an attack on Instructor Shar and the 8th squad, without any regard. But Instructor Shar countered the attack, stating firmly that retreat was no longer an option. She then unleashed her own magical abilities, firing a beam of energy directly at Soo-jung. Soo-jung was caught off guard, realizing that Shar had managed to block her attack effortlessly, while also delivering a powerful counterattack. But it was too late to retreat now. After reaching this stage, there was no turning back. Besides, she knew that Shar wouldn't dare to kill her, not out of mercy, but because she was too concerned about her reputation. So, Soo-jung decided to stake everything on this fight. She shouted at the 3rd squad, commanding them to attack the 8th squad and inflict as much damage as possible, by any means necessary, even if they had to bring her a severed limb. The members of the 3rd squad hesitated, appearing concerned about the consequences, especially since they held no personal grudge against the 8th squad. However, Instructor Soo-jung's tone suddenly changed. She told them that if they wanted to join the Imugi Guild, this was what they had to do, hinting that a single arm or leg would suffice. After those words, the 3rd squad stopped thinking and charged toward the 8th squad, who remained standing in place. Instructor Shar smiled confidently, knowing that any battle fought now would inevitably end in their victory, though she didn't want them to initiate a violent attack. Instructor Soo-jung, on the other hand, was infuriated by Shar's composure, wanting to prove that the instructor she took such pride in would fall one by one before her. Yang noticed that the 3rd squad's fighters included a warrior class member and an archer, but he couldn't determine the 3rd specialty. Suddenly, the 3rd member, Jong-wook, activated his ability, massively enlarging his body. The 8th squad members were astonished by his transformation, impressed by his ability. It was the first time they had witnessed a shape-shifting skill. Yang dashed toward them, telling his teammates that he would handle the giant and the archer, and that all they had to do was deal with the spear wielder for a while. Jong-wook laughed maliciously, declaring that he would crush Yang completely until nothing remained of him. He then launched a fierce attack, but Yang skillfully and swiftly dodged the giant's blows without sustaining a single injury. Jong-wook grew angrier, his attacks becoming even more savage as he lunged straight at Yang. However, Yang successfully countered, striking him back with a powerful combat technique. Jong-wook groaned in pain from Yang's attack, his body suffering significant damage, yet he still refused to fall. Still, his body trembled, barely keeping him upright, prompting Yang to chuckle in amusement, impressed by his resilience. Jong-wook realized that he could never match Yang's attacks, nor could he dodge them. Even if he tried to block them, he would still take damage. But then, he sensed something and glanced behind him briefly before calling out to Jin, signaling to her in a specific way. Jin responded that she understood, then fired a swift, magic-infused arrow toward Yang. The arrow struck the spot where Yang had been standing, triggering a powerful explosion. However, as the smoke gradually dissipated. Yang was nowhere to be found, shocking Jong-wook, who couldn't believe that Yang had dodged Jin's rapid shot. He could only look up when he heard Yang's voice calling him from above, but he couldn't move from his spot. Yang was faster than him and had the advantage. Yang then launched his attack. With a crushing punch aimed at Jong-wook's head, Yang finally made him fall. Jin stared at the scene, unable to believe her eyes. Yang had taken down Jong-wook with a single blow, despite his transformation into a giant. Yang then turned his gaze toward her, releasing his dark, terrifying aura, and told her that it was now her turn. Jin trembled, hastily preparing her bow and arrows while her hands shook. She pleaded with Yang to step away and leave, insisting it would be best for him. But Yang activated his ability to enhance his kicks, stating that this was for Hyuk, before delivering a powerful strike to the ground. The sheer force of the impact sent Jin tumbling down. Even though the attack wasn't directed at her, it was simply that overwhelming. For a brief moment, Yang wondered if he had gone too far, but his thoughts were interrupted when he heard someone calling for help. When he turned toward the voice, he saw Hyuk pinning Chol-yu to the ground, prepared to deliver a fatal blow with his sharp claws, even though Chol-yu kept repeating that it wasn't intentional, that the witch had forced them into this. At that moment, Yang intervened, grabbing Hyuk's hand to stop him. He then told him to calm down, and recognized that the person on the ground wasn't a monster, but a human. Hyuk was stunned when he realized what he had nearly done, then thanked Yang for stopping him in time before he made a terrible mistake. Yang helped him to his feet, then glanced around, wondering if it was finally over, if the battle had reached its end. The answer was clear before them. All the third squad members were lying unconscious on the ground, and even their instructor was unable to stand. Elsewhere, specifically in the office of the vice president of the Baekdusan Guild, Mr. Im Sa-yul, news reaches him that the 8th and 3rd squads have engaged in an intense, unofficial battle during a training mission. Thus, due to the incident between the two instructors, a meeting is convened, bringing together key figures and guild leaders. They review the details presented to them, including a video of the confrontation between the trainees and the instructors, finding it to be shocking. Mr. Sa-yul states that under normal circumstances, Instructor Shar should have been the one presiding over the meeting, as the head instructor. However, given the current situation, he will be assuming the role temporarily. He begins by expressing his deep regret for what happened to the 3rd squad trainees, acknowledging that placing full blame on them would be unfair. Instructor Lee Sang-wook of the 11th squad responds, stating that the one who inflicted harm upon the 3rd squad was none other than a single trainee. Mr. Sa-yul replies that while this might be an overstatement, the matter ultimately falls under self-defense. At that, Instructor Soo-jung erupts in anger, exclaiming how such an act could be considered self-defense when none of the 8th squad members were harmed, while her own squad ended up in this state. But Mr. Sa-yul, in a calm yet distinctly threatening tone, asks her to sit down again, asserting that the greatest fault lies with her, as she was the one who prolonged the conflict over a trivial matter related to personal relationships. Instructor Soo-jung is about to retort sharply, her anger at Instructor Sa-yul reaching its peak. However, he interrupts her before she can speak, warning her about her words, as at this moment, he is acting as the head instructor, and he is the one who will pass judgment here. Another instructor interjects, saying that regardless of the situation, a hierarchy must be maintained. Mr. Sa-yul responds that he is well aware of that, which is precisely why he has gathered everyone here for a vote. He states that in this entire incident, there is only one trainee who could be held accountable, Yang Soo-hyuk. Mr. Sa-yul believes that Yang is no ordinary trainee, but rather an individual of exceptional talent, someone who greatly intrigues him. Continuing, Mr. Sa-yul calls for a show of hands from those who believe that trainee Yang Soo-hyuk deserves punishment. But the room remains silent. No one raises a hand or even speaks. Instructor Lee Sang, the one who suggested the idea, appears frustrated and bewildered, unable to comprehend the reason behind this absolute silence. Mr. Sa-yul then remarks that it is evident that no one supports the idea of punishment, except for Instructor Lee Sang-wook of the Shinoho Guild. With that settled, they move on to the next matter of discussion, Instructor Shar's position. He announces that the first measure to be taken is the submission of a request to remove the head instructor from her post, and for him to assume responsibility in her place. He then asks if anyone objects to this decision. As no one responds, Mr. Sa-yul declares that, accordingly, Shar will be demoted to a regular instructor. Since this might be considered a lenient punishment, she will also be required to donate 1 billion won to the association as an additional penalty. He then asks Instructor Shar if she has any objections to this ruling. Instructor Shar responds calmly, stating that she has no objections, as the fight was not honorable in any way, and she will accept the punishment with an open heart. However, Instructor Soo-jung bursts out in rage, exclaiming that this is surely a joke, that dismissing Shar from her position and fining her 1 billion won is far too lenient and insufficient. Mr. Sa-yul replies firmly that he considers this punishment appropriate, and asks once more if there are any further objections from those present. Soo-young objects again, insisting that this decision is a blatant disregard for the Imuji Guild. Mr. Sa-yul then, in the same calm yet implicitly menacing tone, remarks that it seems the Black Witch has grown far too arrogant despite all the schemes that have been orchestrated. At that moment, Instructor Soo-jung loses her temper and hurls an insult at him in front of everyone, causing the room to fall silent, not because of her words, but because Mr. Sai finally breaks his usual composure, erupting in fury. He warns her never to dare speak on behalf of his guild again and demands that she recognize her place, adding that training and guiding the recruits is about preparing for South Korea's future, a noble mission aimed at protecting the land. Yet in the end, Someone like her dares to taint this noble cause over something as trivial as a romantic dispute. His anger intensifies as he directs his words at her, saying, "The Black Witch, Young Soo Jung. From this moment on, you and all members of the Imugi Guild are banned from holding any training positions for the next 3 years." Soo Young is utterly stunned and furiously demands to know by what authority he can issue such a decision. He calmly replies that as the overseer of the 56th training course, it is his right to make this call. Instructor Lee Sang intervenes, stating that such a decision should be made through a voting process. Mr. Sai acknowledges that this is correct, emphasizing that South Korea is a democratic nation. Therefore, they must choose between the Baekdusan Guild and the Imugi Guild. Lee Sang contemplates the situation, realizing that no matter how strong their ties are with the 3 major guilds, the Baekdusan Guild remains at the top, and it is impossible to compare it to something as insignificant as Imugi. He feels defeated, recognizing that he had bet on the losing side. This is a crushing loss for Imugi. As the meeting finally concludes, the instructors leave, convinced that it was an unnerving experience, as they had never seen Im Sa-yul this enraged before. They begin to speculate on what will happen to the Imugi Guild now, as well as about that one recruit who single-handedly defeated the entire 3rd squad. His name, Yang Soo-hyuk, a trainee with a spotless record, whose talent and abilities are beyond dispute. Yang overhears the discussions about him, feeling curious about what exactly transpired during the meeting. However, regardless of what is happening, he knows he must continue his training. Yet, he cannot deny the sense of pride and satisfaction he feels over the results he has achieved. That night, after feeling that his level had significantly improved, both physically and in combat, Yang begins training in the technique known as absolute force harmonization, which is based on the principle that the earth and the sky are connected by an invisible thread, making them appear separate, yet in reality, they are a single entity. Similarly, his ability seems to manifest as 3 distinct forces, but in essence, it is a unified power. The energy flows from the lower Dantian point, then moves through the yin and yang channels, completing a full cycle throughout the body. This is known as the Great Energy Cycle, Daiju Cheon. Although mastering this technique is incredibly difficult, Yang's experience from the continent of Huan grants him a major advantage in doing so. Indeed, he quickly notices that after unlocking the yin and yang channels, his body immediately purges impurities, bringing him to peak physical condition. Soon, system notifications begin appearing, confirming that after opening these channels, his energy recovery efficiency has increased dramatically, significantly enhancing his strength and combat abilities. Additionally, the increased density of his Dantian results in a substantial boost in his overall power output. With this, Yang feels he is on the right path and that his first major goal has been achieved with remarkable success. The following day, Yang embarks on another training mission with the rest of the 8th Squad and instructor Shar. This time, the dungeon is a vast desert wasteland. However, Yang believes that now that he has regained mastery over the union of heaven and earth, one of the most significant martial arts techniques he used in the continent of Huan, it is time to restore his movement techniques as well. Just then, a sand beast suddenly emerges from the dunes, launching a surprise attack on Yang and his team. But Yang is ready. He swiftly employs the piercing iron palm technique, delivering a devastating strike to the beast, so powerful that the creature is unable to endure for even a single second against the sheer force of Yang's attack. Yang realizes that the iron palm technique consumes a substantial amount of internal energy due to its immense power, but the battle has now escalated into a 3-way confrontation, with 3 beasts attacking him simultaneously. Although he has yet to perfect the technique, it still proves useful. He swiftly dashes toward the monsters, making the decision to engage them head-on, willing to take the risk. Indeed, Yang manages to eliminate one of the beasts with a single strike, sending it flying. This leaves Yoon and Hyuk standing in astonishment at Yang's techniques, as they never thought they would be able to match him in any way. Instructor Shar notices that Yang's movements have become more precise, and that his combat proficiency has improved significantly, indicating that he has grown and developed even more within this short period. After finishing his trial of new techniques, Yang realizes that he has taken down all the beasts by himself. He turns to his teammates and apologizes, saying that he got too carried away in the fight. Thus, the combat training that lasted for 2 weeks comes to an end. At the closing ceremony, Mr. Sai tells them that they have all put in great effort. With the exception of the 3rd Squad, which faced some issues with the 8th Squad, everyone has successfully completed the combat training course. This is not entirely unprecedented, but it is a rare occurrence, meaning that this batch performed exceptionally well overall. After the graduation ceremony, Instructor Shar tells them that they have all done a remarkable job. From now on, they will no longer be referred to as trainees. Thanks to their outstanding achievements, they will receive offers from various guilds with tempting conditions, and the choice will be entirely theirs. However, as their instructor, even if only for a brief period, she wishes to say one thing. This may not necessarily be the most honorable moment in their lives, because they have already made their decision to stand on the battlefield for the sake of this world. That in itself is a great honor, and so she hopes that each of them will make a decision they will never regret before themselves. That is all she has to say. Yoon is deeply moved by her words and rushes toward her, embracing her. Yoon tells her that if it weren't for Instructor Shar, she wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything at all. Instructor Shar responds by saying that she too was very happy to have met them. She considers herself lucky to have been able to stay with them until this moment. Yoon then asks if they will be parting ways now, wondering when they will meet again. She then asks Instructor Shar if she has a phone or any way they can keep in touch. Instructor Shar replies that she does not know what a phone is, but she believes that as long as fate brought them together, the winds will carry news of them to one another eventually. Hyuk interrupts the conversation, addressing Instructor Shar. He reminds her that, as she knows, he is a criminal with a record. On his first day, he told her that he wanted to become an awakened, to seek honorable atonement. Instructor Shar assures him that she remembers that very well. He continues, saying that he was never truly an honorable person, and never possessed the resolve he claimed to have. All he ever sought in life was money. He was never as kind-hearted as she thought because he had the ability to work hard, yet he always looked for the easy way out. However, during his time in the squad with them, he never once felt ashamed of himself. Instructor Shar responds, telling him that no matter how he started, it is something that can change at any time, and he should never forget that, or let tears of regret fall from his eyes again, because his desire to protect those he loves is what will grant him honorable atonement. She promises to keep an eye on him in the future. Instructor Shar then turns to Yang and asks if he has anything he would like to say. Yang replies that it was an honor for him to be with her. Instructor Shar responds by telling him that she looks forward to seeing him again on the battlefield. Thus, their farewell takes place on a clear and beautiful day. Now, all that remains is for them to complete their official registration as awakened individuals in South Korea. This means they only have one step left, the rank evaluation, where hunters in South Korea are classified into 13 ranks. Among them, there is only one person in the 13th rank and 5 people in the 12th rank. These 6 individuals form the primary force that protects and leads South Korea. Yang feels curious to learn who these individuals are, especially since most of the trainees barely qualify as first-rank hunters. Yang proceeds to measure his rank, placing his hand on the glowing crystal to determine his classification accurately. The staff member overseeing the process was feeling drowsy, as nothing noteworthy had happened. However, he is shocked when Mr. Yang Soo-hyuk's rank appears before him. It is the 6th rank, according to the magical crystal's measurement. Yang recalls a group of extraordinary individuals known as the Universal 8, or the 8 Global Heroes. This title is given to those who have reached the 13th rank, also known as the Human Apex. Among them was a genius in his early 20s who managed to reach the 4th rank immediately after completing his training. He did not belong to any guild but always stood out on his own, clearing numerous gates. That person was Baek Mo-hak, a true champion in this field, having achieved an unprecedented record not only in South Korea, but even on a global scale. It was rare for someone to exhibit such rapid growth and skill, but Yang now feels that he has surpassed even Baek Mo-hak's accomplishments. The staff member responds to Yang, asking him to wait a moment while he finalizes the paperwork and issues his hunter license. Yang thinks to himself that Earth's awakened are stronger than he initially expected, while he assumed that the human race, according to the Dimensional Union, was classified at an intermediate level. The elves, in contrast, were categorized as upper intermediate. Meanwhile, the beings leading the Dimensional Union, to which Earth belongs, and who reside in the celestial realm of Goodki, are at an advanced level. On the opposing side of the Dimensional Union stand their greatest enemies, Devon, the demons. If humanity is only at an intermediate level, what would happen if they had to face the demons under these circumstances? But Yang quickly dismisses the thought, recognizing it as merely a rule set by the angels. Since Earth is developing at a pace faster than the Huan continent, surpassing this classification may be possible here. At that moment, the staff member returns and informs Yang that his license has been issued. Now, he can register as a user directly through the wrist device. Yang puts on the device but is suddenly struck by an odd sensation. He asks the staff member whether this device is powered by magic or something similar. The staff member nods, explaining that he has heard it was crafted by dwarven artisans while being enchanted personally by the elves. Yang tests the device and notices that it displays all of his data, just like the system window. He expresses his admiration for it, then asks if he is free to leave now. However, at that moment, another person enters the scene, greeting Yang enthusiastically and expressing his delight at meeting him here. Yang is puzzled and asks whether they have met before. The man chuckles quietly, then apologizes to Yang, explaining that he should have introduced himself first. He then reveals his golden wrist device, displaying his name, Oh Shin Woo, along with his rank, the 11th rank. Yang is taken aback by the number he reads, as it means the man standing before him is one of the strongest hunters in South Korea. Oh Shin Woo extends his hand toward Yang and, with a smile, requests a brief conversation about a simple matter, if possible. Inside Mr. Shin Woo's office, he tells Yang that he will prepare a delicious drink for him. He then begins brewing it in a kettle and places it over the fire. Meanwhile, Mr. Shinwoo gets carried away with the loud music playing in his office, dancing and humming along. He then turns on the heater with his hands and tells Yang that the weather has been very cold and unpredictable lately. Personally, he has caught a cold multiple times during this period, so they should both be careful and stay warm. Yang replies that he is absolutely right, though inwardly, he finds the man to be quite eccentric. Mr. Shinwoo then pours the drink and asks Yang to taste it, explaining that there is a clear reason why foreigners love this particular beverage. Yang takes the cup from him, and Mr. Shinwoo asks if he does not like it. However, Yang assures him that he enjoys it very much. Shinwoo confidently responds that he knew Yang would like it. He adds that he dislikes asking his secretaries to prepare his drinks since they already have enough tasks to handle. And since he has 2 hands and the ability to do things himself, why not make his own drinks as long as he can? Yang shifts the conversation and directly asks about the matter Shinwoo wanted to discuss. Mr. Shinwoo laughs and tells him that his demeanor suggests he prefers getting straight to the point, which is a very good trait. Then he asks him if he has any intention of joining the Awakened Association, to which Yang immediately responds with a firm refusal. Mr. Oh Shin-woo smiles and remarks on how decisive his responses are. He then adds that it is only natural for someone aspiring to be a hunter to have no desire to join the Awakened Association. However, he quickly moves on to the next question, only for Yang to interrupt him, stating that he has no intention of joining any guild either. And to prevent him from asking a third question, Yang firmly declares that he has no plans to emigrate abroad. Mr. Oh Shin-woo reacts with excitement, expressing his delight that Yang feels this way, adding that he personally loves South Korea deeply. He also notes that Yang appears to be highly perceptive. Despite being in a coma for a long time, his mind remains sharp and unaffected. Then, he asks Yang about his goal, urging him not to hesitate in sharing it, assuring him that as long as it is within his capabilities, he will certainly help. Yang leaves after his meeting with the vice president of the Awakened Association of South Korea, Oh Shin-woo, hoping that his request will be fulfilled. Just then, he remembers Yoon and Hyuk, and when he checks his phone, he finds a message from them stating that they have both reached the 3rd rank. Realizing that they will also be very busy, he sends them his congratulations and wishes them success in the future. However, at that moment, Yang senses something strange, as if detecting a powerful and unfamiliar presence. When he turns around, he spots a bright light, or a beam shining in the distance, piquing his curiosity about its origin. He rushes toward it to investigate and satisfy his curiosity. As he approaches, he finds a crowd of people gathered. Standing among them, he wonders why such a scene is unfolding at this time and in this particular place. A gate appears before him, but he questions why it has manifested here, especially given the intense energy radiating from it. Security vehicles arrive, announcing the appearance of a gate and instructing civilians to calmly and safely proceed to the underground shelter at Sancheon Station. They report that a 5th grade gate has been detected near Sincheon Station, and that more than 10 people have already been pulled inside. However, there is no need for panic, and everyone should remain calm, as the awakened have arrived and need space to move in. The guards stand in front of the gate, uncertain about what they should do at the moment, or whether they should wait for the hunters to arrive. They also do not want to enter the gate alone. At that moment, their silence is broken by Yang's voice as he asks if they really have no intention of entering. The guards are surprised by his presence and ask him to step back, pointing out that the area is dangerous. However, Yang shows them the silver wristband he is wearing. Realizing that he must be of a high rank if he is wearing a silver wristband, the guards pause. Yang then confirms to them that he is indeed a hunter. One of the guards approaches him, introducing himself as Kim Yu-min, a 3rd rank guard, and explains that no hunters have arrived yet. He then asks Yang if he intends to enter the gate alone. Yang replies that he is aware that guards are allowed to enter gates in emergency situations. Yu-min confirms that he is correct but hesitates before continuing. Yang interrupts him, asking if he does not consider the current situation an emergency. Yu-min responds, "I don't think so. This isn't something worth risking one's life over." Yang is baffled by his words and asks him to clarify what he means exactly. Yu-min explains that he means it literally. There is no need for the awakened to risk their lives just because some civilians have found themselves in a dangerous situation. He adds that, unfortunately, if that is their fate, then there is no escaping it. Yang is furious at his words and asks if he is even listening to himself. How could he say such a thing? Yu-min arrogantly responds that they are the awakened, not just ordinary civilians, and acting on naive notions of justice is nothing but foolishness. Yang angrily retorts that this has nothing to do with justice, and that anyone who possesses power yet cowers like a frightened turtle has no right to be awakened in the first place. Instead, they should be ashamed of themselves and of such words. The state does not pay them millions annually just to stand idly by without taking action. Yu-min feels the overwhelming presence of Yang and a power exceeding his expectations. He expresses his surprise, as this is the first time he has witnessed an ability like Yang's rapid movement when the latter dashes toward the gate. Yu-min shouts, warning Yang that entering the gate alone as a hunter is illegal, threatening to report him to the association if he does not stop immediately. However, Yang smirks sarcastically, telling him that babies like him serve no purpose here, and that if he has enough time to shout and complain, he should just leave and be a good boy for his family. Yang enters the gate, further enraging Yu-min, who yells at him, saying he should not think that his high rank makes him superior to everyone else, questioning his true identity. He then vows in his mind that he will make Yang regret what he did, but only if he even manages to return from the gate before becoming food for the monsters. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted when he sees Han Tai-min also stepping toward the gate. Yu-min snaps at him, asking if he has lost his mind, insisting that entering that gate means certain death. Han Tai-min replies that he is past childhood, unlike Yu-min, and that he has no problem taking responsibility and doing his job properly. Yu-min becomes even more infuriated as he watches Tai-min enter the gate, believing that everyone has gone insane and thinks they are the smartest people alive. Meanwhile, in another location, inside the gate, a man suddenly finds himself in a strange environment and feels terrified for his daughter, Mi-young. Suddenly, he hears someone screaming for help. Realizing he is inside the gate, but unsure of what to do, he starts running away at full speed, unwilling to stay there, knowing that if he dies, his wife and daughter will have no one to care for them. But as he runs, he fails to notice what lies ahead and trips over something on the ground, falling hard. When he opens his eyes, his terror intensifies. He finds himself face to face with a gigantic flower. He starts screaming, begging not to die, pleading for anyone nearby to save him. As he tries to escape, the predatory flower suddenly lashes out, wrapping its tendrils around him and preventing his retreat while preparing to consume him. The man continues to scream for help until he sees Yang approaching. Recognizing him as an awakened, the man desperately calls out to him for rescue. Yang is well aware of this type of monster, officially known as Atel, which stands between 2 to 3 meters tall. with dark purple coloring and strong tentacle-like appendages. Yang finds it somewhat difficult to get close to the creature and wishes he had a sword, which would have made the fight much easier. However, he realizes that the situation is dire, and regardless of the circumstances, he has no choice but to eliminate the predatory flower at any cost. He dashes toward it with speed, using the wind kick technique to deal maximum damage. And indeed, Yang's attack succeeds. He completely annihilates the monstrous plant. The man he saved watches in shock and amazement, having never witnessed a real battle before. Yang approaches him and introduces himself, stating that his name is Yang Suhyuk, a 6th-rank hunter, reassuring him that there is nothing to worry about anymore. The man, still in shock, expresses his gratitude with deep appreciation for being saved. At that moment, the rest of the guards arrive where Yang and the man are, saying that they came to assist. Upon arrival, they ask Yang if he and the man are okay, or if they have suffered any serious injuries. Yang replies that they are both fine. Han Tai-min steps forward, and when he looks ahead, he is stunned to see that the monster has already been defeated. He expresses his disbelief that Yang managed to take down such a creature alone. Yang replies that even he had not expected it, but it happened quickly. He then asks Tai-min to take care of the man. He adds that he is going to see if there are any other survivors in need of help, but before he can leave, Han Tai-min stops him. He hands him a sword, noting that he saw Yang had no equipment, and that this weapon would be very useful in fighting the Atel creatures. Yang takes the sword, thanking Tai-min, commenting that it looks sturdy and will be quite handy in combat. He then quickly departs, leaving the guards behind as he heads off to search for any other survivors. He can already sense multiple people in that direction, estimating that about 20 individuals are trapped inside this gate. But so far, he has only managed to rescue one. Therefore, he is determined to save them all today and close this gate once and for all. Yang makes his way forward, contemplating that the primary goal of hunters is to destroy the Cosmo Core, which serves as the central mechanism within the gate, allowing them to close it completely. This is because the Cosmo Core is considered the beating heart that maintains the stability of the world and appears in various forms, whether as the strongest living creature, a specific entity, or even a structure within that dimension. This means that if the dungeon boss is defeated carelessly, this entire world may collapse, resulting in the deaths of all the survivors trapped here. Therefore, rescuing the survivors must come first before taking down the boss. Fortunately, there is still time for that. Yang unsheathes his sword, realizing that he hasn't used one in a long time, yet he can immediately tell that the sword he wields now is extraordinary. He effortlessly slices through an Atel beast with precision, his movements becoming more fluid than before. System notifications begin to inform Yang that his level has increased. He notices that the craftsmanship of this sword is on par with that of a first-rank blacksmith from Huan continent. After finally rescuing a considerable number of survivors, he informs them that he will be leaving. His goal is to save the remaining people. Then he asks the guards to protect this area until he returns. Han Tai asks if he is sure he will be fine, especially since this place is swarming with Atel monsters. Yang reassures him, saying that he has already taken down many Atel beasts, and fortunately, the range of this world does not seem vast. Once he gathers all the survivors, he will return here immediately. Han Tai suggests that it would be best to establish a single, fixed gathering point, otherwise they might lose their way. He then displays a map and suggests marking separate locations while maintaining communication with each other and the rest of the guards. Additionally, he states that he will send Yang the locations of the 3 remaining individuals via licensed mail. Yang responds, saying that this method will make the operation much more organized, and he expresses his admiration for the multiple functions of the awakened wristband. Han Tai continues, apologizing for not being able to provide much assistance. However, he clarifies that his team is not strong enough to participate directly in combat. Yang replies that just his intervention and help were enough, but for now, they should focus solely on saving people. Thus, with the support of the guard unit, rescue operations proceeded smoothly, and Yang managed to secure all the survivors and ensure their safety. Now that the matter is settled, he can fully focus on fighting and clearing this dungeon, with only the Cosmo Core left to be destroyed. Yang heads toward the energy source and finally encounters the dungeon boss, a massive Atel flower, towering at nearly 3 meters in height. Yet this does not deter him in the slightest. He swiftly charges at the Atel, attacking it with full force. However, he is taken aback when he realizes that it is not just its enormous size, it also possesses tentacles far stronger than usual. This means that standard sword techniques will have little effect on it, which was to be expected, as the boss is bound to be significantly stronger than ordinary monsters. Yang ponders deeply, realizing that he has no other option. Although this technique is not his preferred style, there is no room for hesitation anymore. He decides to use a dangerous technique, Demonic Death Blade. If he can master it, his power will surpass advanced combat techniques, and even rival celestial martial arts. With this, the full force of the sword will be under his control, and all he needs to do is resist the darkness lurking within it, as there is no other way. To defeat his current sole adversary, the giant Atel, he resolves to eliminate it at once. He then lunges at the colossal Atel, determined to finish it swiftly using his demonic technique. He delivers the finishing blow, instantly cutting down the monstrous predatory flower with no delay whatsoever. Yang exhales in relief, realizing that he has successfully accomplished his goal, yet system notifications continue appearing before him incessantly. He discovers that a new skill grants him immunity against mental corruption, and he considers that utilizing it correctly could have a tremendous impact. He decides to select this skill, but he is completely taken aback by the sudden system notifications that appear. Meanwhile, On the other side of the gate, the guards grow increasingly anxious about Yang, wanting to ensure his safety, especially since he had asked them to move ahead first, but he has been inside the gate for a long time without emerging yet. As they discuss the matter, Yang finally steps out of the gate, in a dramatic fashion, immediately drawing everyone's attention. The guards rush toward him, and Han Tai asks why he took so long inside the gate, explaining that they were starting to worry that something might have happened to him. Yang reassures him that he is completely fine, then praises the sword Han Tai gave him. He says it was truly remarkable in battle before extending his hand to return it. Han Tai responds that the sword was crafted by dwarves, and that he spent all his money to purchase it, but hearing such praise made him feel that it was worth every coin. At that moment, a voice interrupts their conversation, calling out to Yang and asking for his help in sealing the gate. The person turns out to be Kim In-kyu, the leader of the Kiar Guild and a rank 7 hunter, but before he can continue, someone else suddenly shouts that the gate has disappeared. Everyone turns their eyes toward where the gate once stood, only to find that it has completely vanished. They are utterly shocked, realizing that Yang must have cleared it single-handedly. And given that it was a rank 5 gate, this signifies that a truly powerful individual has emerged onto the scene. Of course, such a situation infuriates Yu Min, who is seething with resentment toward Yang, as all attention is now drawn to him, with people starting to look at him as if he were a hero. He scoffs, saying that what Yang did was impressive, but at the same time, he broke the law, and must therefore receive the appropriate punishment. Han Tai asks him what specific law Yang has broken, to which Yu Min replies that Yang entered the gate alone despite being warned against doing so. Han Tai retorts that such reasoning is absurd, then yells at him, saying that he shouldn't try to tarnish Yang's reputation with flimsy excuses, especially since he did not enter the gate alone, as they followed him in afterward. Yu Min snaps, accusing Han Tai of twisting words, insisting that Yang had no intention of respecting the law from the start, and that they only followed him because luck was on his side. Han Tai sighs, saying that talking to him was pointless from the beginning. Yu Min raises his voice, arguing that he tried his best to stop Yang from entering the gate alone, but Yang completely ignored him. He then adds that if everyone were to act in such a way, what would be the point of laws? And isn't it true that no one should take the guild or the association lightly? Onlookers begin to turn toward Yu Min, puzzled by his loud outburst, wondering why he is acting aggressively instead of showing gratitude. Moreover, many among them don't even know who he is, other than the fact that he is merely an employee of the association, meaning he shouldn't be acting this way at all. Hearing this only fuels Yu Min's anger further, and he declares that if this is how things are going to be, he will make sure they all understand it the hard way. He then says that he will personally teach that arrogant, stone-hearted man how guards handle illegal awakened ones. Grabbing Yang by the collar, he declares that this is the end for him, and that he will receive the punishment he deserves as a criminal. Yang simply looks at him without uttering a word, further infuriating Yu Min, who shouts that if Yang wants to hit him, he should go ahead and do it. After all, if he's already a criminal, what harm would one more crime do? As he continues his threats, vowing that he will personally make sure Yang rots in prison, he is abruptly silenced by a powerful punch to the gut from Yang. Yu Min collapses to the ground in pain, gasping that he will ensure Yang suffers in jail for this. At that moment, Kim In-kyu, the hunter present at the scene, steps in and yells at Yu Min, saying that he should have thanked Yang for saving lives and closing the gate instead of acting like a madman. Yu Min, still clutching his stomach, angrily demands to know who he is and why he is interfering. Q responds that he is the leader of the Kiar Guild, and dares him to try arresting him as well. At that moment, Oh Shin-woo arrives, requesting that everyone calm down and make way for him to speak for just a minute. He then removes his glasses, and his tone takes on a serious edge as he announces that he has been listening to the conversation from afar. After that, he introduces himself as the vice president of the Awakened Association, Hunter Oh Shin-woo, and begins by offering a full apology for their failure to handle the situation swiftly enough, assuring everyone that they will make sure such an incident does not happen again. He also explains that anyone suffering from injuries can head to any university hospital affiliated with the association, as all medical expenses will be fully covered. He then adds that if it weren't for Hunter Yang, this situation would have turned into an absolute disaster. At that moment, an elderly woman pleads with Shin-woo not to punish Yang. Soon after, the man Yang saved also steps forward, affirming that without Yang, he would never have been able to see his wife and daughter again, and that Yang does not deserve any punishment. Shin-woo reassures them, stating that there is absolutely no reason to punish Hunter Yang in the first place. After that, he turned to Yang and asked him to check his license using the awakened wristband. Yang complied, and the moment he opened the system window, he was shocked by what he saw. It turned out that he had now become a solo awakened, or a lone hunter. At that moment, he realized that the request he had made to Mr. Shin-woo regarding his status as a solo player had already been processed swiftly. Then, Mr. Shin explained to everyone that a solo player is authorized to enter gates alone. Additionally, as an awakened, he had made great efforts to save people. For that reason, he deserved a reward, and Shin-woo asked everyone to applaud today's hero, Mr. Yang Soo-hyuk. And so, thanks to Oh Shin-woo's intervention, the gate incident was quickly resolved. As for Kim Yu-min, based on witness testimonies, his license was suspended for 3 months due to his lack of the proper mindset for an awakened. It was also decided that he would undergo 2 months of training before being assigned to frontline duty for 6 months. After that, Yang shook hands with Mr. Shin-woo, who thanked him for his efforts and hard work. Additionally, Yang was promoted 2 ranks in the hunter classification, reaching rank 8, and received a monetary reward of approximately 20 million won. At that moment, Yang made one more request to Mr. Shin-woo, to keep his name hidden due to this incident and ensure his anonymity. Shin-woo replied that he didn't know the reason behind this request, but assured him that it wouldn't be difficult to fulfill, and he would see to it. Yang thanked Shin-woo before leaving and heading home. At home, Yang began inspecting the rewards he had obtained that day. The prize included monastones, each valued at around 80 million won. He had 2 of them, as guard Han Tai had stopped him on his way back and handed them over after noticing that he hadn't had a chance to collect any due to being occupied with rescuing people. Yang considered it an unexpected bonus, and after adding the value of the mana stones to his monetary reward, he found that the total amounted to 180 million won. After deducting taxes, he was left with approximately 160 million won. Adding this to his current balance, his total assets now reached 200 million won. He felt happy knowing he had managed to accumulate this amount in just one day, and decided that if he could earn another 300 million won, he would be able to take out a small loan and buy a modest apartment. This was his family's dream, so Yang resolved to continue working at the same pace. Then, he browsed through his system window and found a skill titled Low Rank Destroyer. Curious about its effects, he examined it. He found it to be incredibly powerful and wondered, if a skill ranked this low was already so strong, what would its impact be later on? He also searched for other abilities and discovered a variety of skills, including some that aided in magic usage, and others that granted resistance against it. At that moment, he recalled that during his time in the Huan continent, the most difficult challenges he had faced were illusions, magical arts, and formations. Of course, back then, he had some immunity to these things. Thus, he never had any significant issues. But on Earth, in order to acquire such immunity, he would need to at least reach the Chowa Kyung level. If he could achieve that, his mental defenses would become far stronger, and he would no longer be susceptible to illusions. At that moment, he realized just how valuable his martial arts training had been. Just then, his younger sister suddenly barged into his room and asked what he was doing and why he was talking to himself. He replied that he wasn't doing anything. Then, he asked why she had come, to which she answered that she had bought some fruit and wanted him to come eat with her. They sat together, eating while listening to the news, which reported an explosion at a gate near Shinchan Station that had caused chaos earlier that afternoon. At that moment, his sister mentioned that she had been in Shinchan that day, and that the situation had indeed been chaotic, with people fleeing while awakened hunters rushed in from all directions. Yang felt a twinge of concern about the possibility of his identity being exposed, but then he recalled that he had asked Vice President Oh Shin-woo to keep everything undisclosed. He was confident that the situation would be under control. Nonetheless, he realized that he wouldn't be able to keep this hidden forever. Then, he caught sight of the system wristband on his arm, and felt that he should tell his sister the truth when they were alone. However, he knew that if he told her he had been involved in a dangerous incident on his very first day, she might become anxious or even object to his actions. So, he quickly concealed the wristband he was wearing. But his sister noticed. She grabbed his hand and asked him if the wristband was real, just like the ones worn by awakened hunters. And when she confirmed it, she was completely stunned, asking in disbelief if this meant he had truly become one of the awakened.